You'd think 911 is only for real emergencies, right? Turns out, not everyone got the memo. From battling lawn gnomes to serial crises, these calls prove that common sense isn't as common as you'd hope. Let's get into it. 1. A woman called 911 because she couldn't find her car in a parking lot. Officers showed up, probably expecting a grand theft auto situation, only to spot her car exactly where she left it. Plot twist. She was looking for a red car, but hers was blue. Imagine the emotional roller coaster for those poor cops, gearing up for a major crime scene and ending up in a live-action Where's Waldo game. Honestly, at that point, even the dispatcher probably needed a coffee break or a margarita. 2. A man once made a panicked 911 call because a squirrel was staring at him through his window in a threatening manner. He claimed he felt like the squirrel was plotting something. Maybe it was planning a tiny revolution, maybe it just wanted a peanut. We'll never know. The only thing clear was that nature's smallest warriors had upgraded from stealing birdseed to psychological warfare. Somewhere, an actual emergency was waiting because Gary couldn't handle eye contact with a rodent. 3. One woman dialed 911 to report her neighbor's wind chimes for being too cheerful. Apparently, the sweet tinkling sounds were ruining her very serious, existential mood. Honestly, imagine being so committed to being miserable that even wind chimes feel like a personal attack. The dispatcher, surely fighting the urge to laugh, suggested she talk to her neighbor instead. Missed opportunity, starting a petition to ban happiness within a 100-foot radius. 4. A man once called the police because a barista spelled his name wrong on a coffee cup. That's it. No robbery, no assault, just a brutal attack on his personal branding. He wanted the police to issue a warning, as if the barista had committed a high crime against humanity. The dispatcher, undoubtedly questioning all of their life choices, gently advised him to just correct the barista next time. Honestly, if spelling your name wrong is the worst thing that happens to you today, you're living the dream. 5. A woman rang up 911 because she wasn't sure if it was illegal to eat ice cream while driving. She was desperately trying to finish her sundae before it melted, an understandable crisis, honestly, but didn't want to accidentally end up with a criminal record. The dispatcher reassured her that while it's not illegal, it's probably not the safest idea either. Somewhere, in an alternate universe, there's a version of Fast and Furious entirely about reckless dessert consumption. 6. A man once called 911 because he needed professional guidance on grilling a steak. He wanted to make sure it came out medium rare, so his wife would finally stop roasting him for undercooking dinner. Instead of dialing up Google like a sane person, he went straight to emergency services, because obviously nothing says national crisis like poorly seared beef. The dispatcher, no doubt wondering if they were secretly part of a cooking hotline now, recommended he check a recipe. Somewhere, Gordon Ramsay wept softly into a well-done ribeye. 7. In one truly heartbreaking case of misplaced priorities, a frantic gamer called 911 after accidentally deleting their favorite video game save file. Sobbing into the phone, they asked if the police could restore it. Unfortunately, even the FBI's cybercrime unit isn't equipped to resurrect your lost level 99 wizard. The dispatcher had to break the devastating news. 911 doesn't offer tech support for emotional trauma caused by poor backup habits. Somewhere out there, a digital kingdom remains forever unconquered. 8. Sports fans are known for their passion, but one person took it straight into the twilight zone. After their favorite team started losing, they called 911, yes, the actual emergency line, to demand the police step in and make it fair. Because clearly, what the game needed wasn't better defense, but a law enforcement intervention. The dispatcher, probably questioning the nature of reality, politely suggested waiting for the next game. Although, honestly, it would have been way more fun to send a squad car to tackle the referee. 9. Somewhere in America, a man faced a profound moral dilemma and decided only the authorities could solve it. He called 911 to ask if eating cereal for dinner was illegal. Breakfast foods at dinner time? Surely a crime against society. The dispatcher, summoning every ounce of professionalism, reassured him that no, Captain Crunch wasn't contraband after 6 p.m. One has to wonder, though, what other life choices this guy clears with emergency services. 911, is it okay if I wear socks with sandals? 10. A man once dialed 911 to file a very serious grievance. His Uber driver refused to stop for fast food. Outraged and clearly viewing this as an urgent civil rights issue, he wanted the police to force the driver to detour for a burger. The dispatcher, channeling the patience of a saint, kindly suggested he address his craving through Uber's customer support instead of tying up an emergency line. Honestly, if burgers are a constitutional right now, I'm rethinking my entire understanding of the Bill of Rights. 11. One caller rang up 911, not because of a break-in, a fire, or a medical emergency. No, they just forgot their keys. Totally locked out, standing on their own porch, wondering if police services now included locksmith duties. The dispatcher, probably stifling a chuckle, explained they'd need to call an actual locksmith instead of emergency responders. Imagine being so embarrassed you start hoping the neighbors don't notice you making that call while sitting on your own welcome mat like a lost puppy. 12. In an act of pure American ingenuity, or confusion, a driver called to ask if they could legally use the carpool lane, with a mannequin in the passenger seat. Their argument? The mannequin was wearing a hat, so it totally counted as a person. The dispatcher had the unenviable task of explaining that hats, no matter how dapper, do not grant mannequins civil rights. Somewhere, a lonely dummy is still waiting for recognition as a legitimate commuter. 13. One man found himself so personally violated by a tree that he called 911 to report it. His neighbor's newly planted tree was apparently invading his personal space. He wanted officers dispatched immediately to, what, arrest it for loitering? Police politely informed him that tree disputes fall under civil matters, not crimes against humanity. Somewhere out there, a maple tree is living rent-free in this man's head. 14. Believe it or not, someone once dialed 911 because they couldn't pick a movie to watch on Netflix. They demanded a police-approved recommendation, like the dispatcher was suddenly moonlighting as a streaming service concierge. Keeping the sarcasm to a heroic minimum, the dispatcher suggested a crime drama, because if you're wasting 911's time, at least be thematically consistent. 15. One man was absolutely convinced he had been robbed of his car keys. They had vanished right off his kitchen counter. He called 911, ready for a full-scale investigation, only for officers to discover the shocking culprit. Gravity. His keys had simply fallen behind the couch. Somewhere, a very bored cat is probably laughing at all the commotion. 16. Christmas spirit turned into Christmas fury when a woman called 911 about her neighbor's overly enthusiastic holiday lights. She claimed they were so bright she couldn't sleep and demanded the police come over to dim them down. The dispatcher, maintaining angelic patience, explained that the law doesn't cover festive light bulb offenses. Somewhere, Clark Griswold is nodding proudly at another successful illumination mission. 17. Setting a clock shouldn't require an emergency call, but one frustrated person thought otherwise. They rang up 911 because they couldn't figure out how to reset the time on their microwave. Maybe the buttons were too tiny. Maybe it was a protest against daylight saving time. Whatever it was, the dispatcher had to gently explain that appliance troubleshooting isn't in the standard police training manual. Imagine needing backup just to heat a hot pocket. 18. One exasperated parent called emergency services because their teenage son flat out refused to clean his room. They wanted an officer dispatched to teach him some discipline. The dispatcher, probably visualizing a SWAT team storming in over dirty laundry, kindly reminded them that parenting, while dangerous, is still a do-it-yourself project. 19. In what might be the pettiest sprint in history, a woman called 911 to report an ice cream truck speeding through her neighborhood. Not because it endangered kids. No, because she couldn't catch up to buy a popsicle. She demanded the driver be ticketed for going too fast for snack procurement. The dispatcher suggested waiting for the next lap. No word on whether she practiced her sprinting in the meantime. 20. In perhaps the greatest battle between man and lawn ornament, a concerned citizen called 911 to report that their neighbor's garden gnome was watching them and giving off bad vibes. Gnomes, the new surveillance state. Officers reassured the caller that, sadly, they don't regulate mystical energy fields generated by decorative statuary. Somewhere, that gnome is probably plotting its next act of psychological warfare, with a smug little smirk. 21. A man convinced his neighborhood was under siege called 911 to report a barking dog. He described the canine as a serious threat, presumably plotting a takeover with an army of other loud pets. Officers rushed over expecting a four-legged rebel leader, only to find the dog peacefully napping inside, probably dreaming about bacon and tennis balls. Turns out, the only thing this threat to the community was endangering was a world record for cutest snore. 22. One night, a fully grown man called 911 because he had a bad dream. Not a heart attack, not a home invasion, a nightmare. He wanted officers to check under the bed for monsters. The dispatcher, channeling every ounce of adult professionalism, gently assured him that there were no monsters registered in his area and encouraged him to go back to sleep. Somewhere, the boogeyman is probably offended at being doubted like that. 23. A man once placed an emergency call because his neighbor dared to hang up Christmas lights too early. He insisted it was unlawful decoration and demanded the police enforce a strict holiday timeline. The dispatcher had to remind him that, shocking as it may seem, there's no federal regulation controlling when you can break out the inflatable Santas. Buddy, if your biggest problem is premature festive cheer, you're doing better than most. 24. In what can only be described as suburban horror, a woman called 911 to report her neighbor's lawn for being too perfectly mowed. She claimed the unnaturally symmetrical grass was disturbing and probably some kind of suburban witchcraft. The dispatcher politely explained that immaculate landscaping, while deeply unsettling to some, was not currently a jailable offense. Somewhere out there, a proud homeowner is still celebrating their victory in the lawn wars. 25. In one of the more tragic love stories of modern times, a woman dialed 911 because her internet browser wouldn't load a website. She was convinced it was a security breach and demanded an immediate police response, as if the SWAT team could parachute in and reboot her Wi-Fi. The dispatcher had to patiently explain that slow internet, while personally devastating, is not a matter for law enforcement. Somewhere, a frustrated IT guy probably felt a sudden disturbance in the force. 26. A call came in from someone deeply disturbed because their neighbors dared to play loud music during their sacred yoga session. They claimed it was disrupting their inner peace and demanded emergency intervention as if the police had a special SWAT team for meditative crises. The dispatcher, radiating actual Zen levels of patience, suggested noise-canceling headphones. Frankly, if your entire aura can be shattered by a few bass beats, maybe it's not the music, it's you. 27. In a sequel no one asked for, another neighbor drama erupted over a lawn gnome. A man called 911, genuinely distressed, claiming the gnome was looking at him funny. He insisted the police do something about it, because clearly, ceramic eye contact is now a felony. Officers responded, and after a very serious investigation suggested he simply look the other way. Somewhere, that gnome is probably updating its LinkedIn to professional troublemaker. 28. Vending machines. Humanity's last, most ruthless enemy. One shopper was so enraged when a vending machine ate their dollar that they called 911 and demanded the machine be arrested for theft. Honestly, imagining a vending machine in handcuffs almost makes it worth it. The officers did not, tragically, perform a citizen's arrest on the snack bandit, and the caller didn't even get their Doritos. Justice was not served. 29. One woman, fueled by suburban outrage, called 911 because her neighbor's tree had the audacity to drop leaves into her yard. She claimed it was a violation of property boundaries, as if rogue foliage should come with a court summons. Officers very diplomatically recommended she invest in a rake. Somewhere, Mother Nature is quietly laughing and plotting her next leafy assault. 30. A man called 911, trapped in his own driveway, not by snow, not by ice, but by a gang of geese. He described them as dangerously territorial, like a feathered motorcycle gang blocking the exit. By the time officers arrived, the geese had casually waddled away, probably high-fiving each other with their wings. Somewhere, a surveillance camera missed out on the greatest standoff of the year. Man versus goose. Iki, 31. Running late and stuck at a perpetually red light, a frustrated driver called 911 to request immediate police intervention, as if the dispatcher kept a squad of traffic elves on standby. They wanted officers to fix it immediately, because obviously, world peace could wait. The dispatcher kindly explained that traffic signals are managed by city maintenance, not emergency responders. No word on whether the caller still thinks police carry screwdrivers and traffic wizard hats. 32. Somewhere out there, a melting ice cream cone sparked a full-blown existential crisis. A panicked caller dialed 911 because their frozen treat was disappearing too fast, and they genuinely wanted the police to save it. The dispatcher, professionally holding back a laugh, suggested eating it fast. If only all life's emergencies could be solved by eating dessert before it melts. Priorities, people. Priorities. 33. A man, terrified of the encroaching darkness, called 911 with a heartfelt request. Could an officer stand guard outside his house until sunrise? Because obviously, shadows are no match for police presence. The dispatcher, maintaining saint-like composure, suggested he simply turn on a light and assured him there were no monsters lurking. Somewhere, a neighborhood raccoon was probably offended that it wasn't even considered a proper nighttime threat. 34. In yet another episode of Christmas Spirit Gone Wrong, a man complained that his neighbor's holiday lights were blinding. He was genuinely concerned they might violate some sort of brightness ordinance, because nothing says season's greetings like demanding a light-level investigation. The officers had to gently explain there's no maximum wattage for inflatable Santas and glowing reindeer. Somewhere out there, that neighbor is still the North Star of suburban rebellion. 35. Someone called 911 in a true moment of crisis. Their cat had stolen their slice of pizza. In a voice dripping with betrayal, they demanded to know if it counted as theft and if officers could retrieve their cheesy dinner hostage. Unfortunately, the law isn't designed to prosecute felonious felines, and the dispatcher recommended simply getting another slice. Meanwhile, the cat showed zero remorse and possibly even plotted its next culinary heist. 36. Bad hair days are tough. But one caller decided it was enough to warrant emergency intervention. They begged 911 to send a stylist because they couldn't go outside looking like this. The dispatcher, now questioning every career choice they had ever made, gently reminded them that while police can do a lot, fixing tragic bangs isn't on the list. Somewhere, a hairbrush cried in solidarity. 37. A man made a frantic call about a suspicious package on his porch. Officers arrived swiftly, prepared for anything, only to discover it was the man's own forgotten online order. His response? "Oh, right, my new shoes." Somewhere, a pair of sneakers is still laughing at how close they came to being a bomb squad headline. 38. Someone once called 911 to report a shady character lurking in their neighborhood, only to realize, mid-panic, that it was their own reflection in a store window. They apologized profusely, but not before a squad car had already been dispatched. Somewhere, a dispatcher probably added evil twin incidents to their list of things they thought they'd never have to handle. 39. A man reported a serious crime during a peaceful picnic. A squirrel had stolen his sandwich right off the table. Outraged, he demanded the little thief be arrested. The dispatcher, probably picturing the squirrel smugly nibbling its ill-gotten bounty, suggested he just make another sandwich. Nature's true criminals have no fear of our legal system. 40. Office politics hit an all-time low when a man called 911 to report a co-worker had stolen the last donut from the break room. Labeling it office theft, he wanted a full police investigation launched into the missing pastry. The dispatcher kindly advised that perhaps next time he should just bring his own snacks, preferably something squirrel-proof. 41. One man, incensed beyond reason, called 911 because his local grocery store had committed the ultimate sin. They were out of his favorite brand of cereal. He demanded police intervention like he was reporting an armed robbery, except the only thing missing was his sugary morning ritual. The dispatcher, maintaining peak professionalism, politely suggested trying another store. Somewhere, a sad, empty cereal bowl is still waiting for justice, and maybe a sprinkle of common sense. 42. A man once called emergency services to file what he clearly thought was a groundbreaking lawsuit. His new shoes were giving him blisters. He wanted to know if he could officially press charges against the shoe company for personal discomfort. The dispatcher, probably updating their personal list of weirdest calls ever, had to explain that while uncomfortable shoes are a tragedy, they're not exactly a matter for the legal system. Somewhere, a Band-Aid was whispering, "I told you so." 43. Toilet paper emergencies were once a real thing, but this woman took it to a whole new level. She called 911 to report that her favorite store had sold out of her preferred brand of toilet paper and demanded an emergency delivery. Because when you need those quilted 2-ply reinforcements, apparently the only logical next step is to mobilize law enforcement. The dispatcher, surely resisting the urge to laugh, suggested checking online, or, just buying a different roll. Crisis averted, sort of. 44. A panicked tourist called 911, trapped in a deadly architectural menace, a revolving door. They had been going in circles, literally, for several minutes and feared they might never escape. By the time officers arrived, the tourist had heroically freed themselves, presumably by just stepping out. Somewhere, that revolving door is still spinning, waiting for its next unwitting victim. 45. In a heartbreaking tale of roommate betrayal, a man called 911 to report that his roommate had eaten all the marshmallows out of the cereal box, leaving only the sad, flavorless bits. He insisted this was outrageous behavior and wanted police to intervene, presumably with marshmallow restitution. The dispatcher, surely wondering how society made it this far, suggested he simply buy his own box, preferably one he could lock away in a safe. 46. A woman, clearly at the end of her patience, dialed 911 because her children were fighting over the TV remote. She wanted the police to come sort them out, as if officers are trained negotiators for SpongeBob versus Animal Planet disputes. The dispatcher calmly suggested using a tried-and-true method known as a timeout, rather than deploying law enforcement over custody of the Roku. Somewhere, Super Nanny sighed in professional disappointment. 47. Heartbreak took a bizarre turn when someone called 911 to report a true tragedy. Their favorite TV show had been canceled. They described it as emotionally devastating and demanded to know who was responsible, as if the cops have a hotline straight to Netflix. The dispatcher, demonstrating an Oscar-worthy level of patience, gently advised them to find a new series to binge. Probably one about coping mechanisms. 48. A teenager, plotting an escape from algebra, called 911 to ask if skipping school could land them behind bars. They wanted to know if a mental health day, without permission, counted as a crime. The dispatcher informed them it wasn't exactly a police matter but encouraged a wild, revolutionary idea. Talk to your parents. Somewhere, a truant officer quietly wept at the missed paperwork opportunity. 49. In a stunning escalation of neighborhood jealousy, a man reported his neighbor for trimming their tree too perfectly. He claimed the tree's now tidy appearance was somehow invading his privacy, as if neat branches were spying on him. Officers, holding back laughter, suggested the ultimate counterattack: plant his own tree. Somewhere, 2 oak trees are silently locked in an unspoken suburban Cold War. Which one broke your brain the most? Tell us in the comments. And if you've ever been this close to calling 911 over something dumb, you're among friends here. Hit subscribe. You're gonna need it.